Hello, this is Brave New History. I'm here with Gnostic Quran. We're talking about Gnosticism in the Quran, as we usually do. And thank you for coming. And everybody, thanks for watching. So we're talking about... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. But I just wanted to discuss the aeons and possible connection, or at least one possible suggestion of what kind of Arabic word would be for the aeons in the Quran itself. And aeons, like how can you talk about the Gnosticism without mentioning the aeons? It's what the heck? It's like Gnosticism. Or it would be Sophia, Yildabaoth aeons. It would be the major trope. But if it makes sense to use the term Gnostic itself, right? Because I highly doubt that, for example, Marcionites use this terminology with the aeons. More or less, you would see this not the Christianity, but even Judaism, right? When we are talking about Marcionism. And the idea of seeing the Marcionism as Judaism is very problematic for the rabbis. You can understand that. Because it raises a big amount of additional question. How did this happen? How this evolution occurred? But this term Gnostic, problematic, gaining much bewilderment among the modern scholars. It's just making sense only because of sort of a point of contact between different number of different traditions that held this idea of aeons and specific schemes of emanations of higher God into the lower divinities. When you amalgamate them, what it is called? It's called pleroma. This fullness of this emanation scheme. But what the aeons are actually, if you do translate it literally, the aeon itself stands for the long period of time. It's quite evidential in the Septuagint, in Greek Bible, or at least was it claimed to be translation from the Hebrew Bible into Greek. And for us, of course, it's not, well, I guess it's not correct to say that, because sometimes you actually see Greek loanwords in Arabic, but in most of the cases, Arabic would follow the same scheme or same pattern as other Semitic languages, in that case, Hebrew. And for our study, the Hebrew is much more important, or Syriac. Some materials are way older in terms of all this pseudo-epigraphical or pseudo, how is it, the biblical material which
Apocalyptic or apocryphal?
Pseudo-apocryphal, right? How is it called? Old Enochian tradition, much of which is written in Syriac, not in Hebrew. And it's way older than the Hebrew material we have, right? Talmud itself, as far as I know, the earliest manuscripts of Talmud is 10th century. It's very younger. But when it comes to the aeons, when it's actually translated into the Hebrew Bible, what the word is used? The word which is used is alam. And many scholars actually were surprised to find this parallel with a famous phrase in the Quran, which Muslims recites every day, Rabbil Alameen. It's the second verse of the first surah, introductory surah, Fatiha. Fatiha basically is kind of a open door. It's when you need to open something, you would use this verb Fatiha. But yeah, and this Rob al-Alamin, it's probably a calque, this Alamin from the Hebrew Alam, Alamim in that case, because the plural in Hebrew with a meme, not with a noon, as it's in Arabic. And actually, there is some Talmudic material when you can see it's not exactly the same, but I mean, it's semantically the same. Ribon ha'olamim in Hebrew, the Lord of the worlds, as it's often translated. But yeah, but that stems itself from the Talmud Berachot, and I'm very critical when it comes to the Talmud, because you can see it everywhere. When we're dealing with the Quran, especially from the Christian apologists, how Quran borrows from Talmud. Is it so clear? Because Talmud is way younger than Quran. I mean, you can guess the oral transmission, but how it's different from the classical Sunni claim that there was like brilliant memory of the Hebrew sages, which transmitted Talmud without any blemishes till the 10th century. So this study, this field of study itself, problematic. But what is more significant is what predates the Quran. In that case, it's either, in most of the cases, it's Syriac material, because before Arabic became the dominant language in the Middle East, there was Aramaic language, which was used in trade, in everyday matter. It was like English back in the day. If you were living in the Middle East, or even in eastern parts of Iran, if you want to do a trade, even if you're a Greek trader, you must learn Aramaic without a doubt. But in Syriac materials, what we have, like Peshitta, which itself is a Syriac translation of the either most probably Masoretic text we have. This word al-alamin mostly used in its literal sense. Al-alamin would be, or alamin, some big scope of time, big longitude of time. Yeah, and itself, this idea, I think, stems from the Plato, the idea of distinguishing, or at least giving the different meaning to this aeons, rather than just the scope of time, because obviously in Gnosticism it's not just simply some ages we're dealing with, and in that sense, this word is used very often when we're dealing with a translation from the Buddhist scripture, because in Buddhism as well as in Hinduism, we see this idea of the kalpas, of this different stages of the development of the universe, and the aeons would be used in that sense. But broadly speaking, in Gnosticism, we're dealing with some sort of divinities, some sort of emanations, and the idea of using this particular Greek word may well be coming from the Plato. Because in Timaeus, Plato's form definition would use this would use this word itself, aionion eikona, this eternal image, as it's usually translated. And Plato relates this eternity to the world of beings. So there's this, Plato himself was a pantheist, and he held the idea that the world is one being, and depending on the what we experience basically in our daily life, it's just this kind of a weird imprint of this more higher layers of this being, highly transcendental, more transcendental layers of this wholeness. And these higher realms were often called forms, and hence we got this theory of forms of Plato. So I myself traced the idea of identifying even this whole paradigm, or identifying this particular word aeon with sort of a weird divinities from Plato, whether it was just misappropriation of Hebrew, or maybe Hebrew Bible itself stemming from some Platonic ideas. That's another question, right? Let's remember Russell Gamerkin and his and his thought about that, or about maybe not borrowing, but at least literal dependency of the text of the Torah on whether Plato Timaeus or some proto source with a Plato. Yeah, and it's a big question, of course, whether Plato himself viewed as infinities being temporal or atemporal. There is a whole debate in philosophy, but it's not so important for us. For us, it's important that we have the similar language used, as it was used later on in Gnosticism. And Gnosticism is a form of Platonism. I wouldn't call it Neoplatonism, because Neoplatonism is just one of the way you can go from this basis of the Plato. That's why we have the famous debates of the Plotinus himself with the Gnostics. Not because they somehow were Neoplatonic heretics, right? But they just read the Plato differently. And everybody back at the day would be influenced by Plato. Like, what the hell? It's just common ontology for the antiquity. But yeah, the whole system of emanation rests on the idea of the extrusion of this aeons from the higher metaphysical reality. And well, if there is extrusion, we're certainly dealing with a temporality. And depending on how you perceive this emanation process, you can describe the different you can describe it in a different manner, presenting different types of diagrams. And these diagrams of emanations essentially what we have today as a demarcation line between the different Gnostic schools, right? Whether it's going to be Valentinianism with its 30 aeons, right? Or whether it's going to be Sethianism or Mandeism, or whatever the Gnostic religion you would choose, they would have their own ideas about what divinity is in that case, what this pleroma. And I myself think that later on, even in a more broadly speaking theological tradition of Christianity and Islam, you see exactly the same. They would just simply rehash these aeons into the names or attributes of God, basically. That's what be the major distinction. Yeah, but
and
yeah.
with Alim, meaning like divine image of God. You wonder if there's a relationship with Adam Kadmon and
Yeah,
the archons or the eons.
yeah, and Adam Kadmon appears almost in every Gnostic school. I recently found out there's two Adams tradition in Mondaism, for example. There's celestial Adam, which is some sort of a blueprint for the
Mhm.
anthropos, which is in earthly realm, earthly Adam created out of the clay, and more
And
more
with
yeah. Go
like
on,
with
please.
the Muslim tradition, you wonder
If there was a distinction like that, but I think definitely you can see it in Shiism, at least I can tell about the Sufis, but as far as I know, there was some Sufi writer who held exactly the same. That there is this Adam al Qadim in that case, not the Kadmon, but it's pronounced in Arabic, or Insan al Qadim is often is used. And there's this earthly Adam, and hence you have even in the Quran allusions to that. Some it's like in the Bible, right? That there is two stories of the creation narrated in the Bible. Same you can see in the Quran, something like that, but with Adam. Two stories of the creation of Adam, and it was picked up by the Christian apologists, as far as I know. That look, Quran have a contradiction. In one of the verses, it stated that Adam created from this particular substance from the clay, but other times it's just stated that Jesus was created like the Adam, be, and here it is. Like, it's not out of dust, my friend. There's contradiction, but what's probably we're dealing with is just two stories. It's not the same Adam we're talking about, and hence this idea of identification of Jesus with Adam. It was very popular among the Gnostics too. That yeah, but dealing with this alam, because it would be in Hebrew, it would contain wa, the letter vav in at the second position, and same you can see in the, at least in the current mushafs, right? Current rendition of the Quran we have, that you will see this dagger aleph added, indicating more prolonged sound alam, not just alam, but alam, and that may indicate the borrowing, but the problem, of course, that no such thing exists in the early manuscripts. This old dagger aleph stuff were added later on during like the 9th century. That's why there was some guy commented on my video that, well, my friend, there is already specific term for the aeons ayam, but ayam even generally in the Quran used in the sense of the year. I haven't checked out the details, but he basically stated that it's problematic to translate it as the aeons because the whole root, base root from which this alam stemming is ain lam mim, and it connects it to the process of learning, like this famous catchphrase oftenly added at the end of some verses when the Quran criticizes outer groups, and it's often added like in kuntum ta'alamun, if only you were knowledgeable people, basically. And this ta'alamun stems from the same root base. In that case, Srob al-Alamin can be just Lord of the knowledges. No, it's wrong to add this plural in English with this particular word, but just for example. But yeah, It's problematic in terms of the pure script itself. A usage of the word as a designator for aeons can be observed in Syriac Odes of Solomon. And there was a recent fascinating translation of the Odes by the Samuel Zinner, and I don't remember the second name of the scholar. Sorry for my memory, but they did the translation, and it's free, by the way, so you can check up on the academia page of the Samuel Zinner. It will be there, and it's published on some sort of website dedicated to the whole translation, nuhra.net, and it's used there for the aeons, this alam or alma, like the alma ve'abuhon, that because of him, he's imperishable, the pleroma, the shmaliyah of the aeons, the alma ve'abuhon, and he father of them. So you can see already that in some Syriac, and many point out the Gnostic origin, or at least Jewish Gnostic, right? Jewish Gnostic origin of this particular text. But what is interesting that we actually have the famous Pistis Sophia treatise, the biggest Gnostic Gospels we have for today, at least for now. And what is interesting, that some part of this Pistis Sophia dealing with this Odes of Solomon, and it's more or less like the exegesis on this particular literary framework. But Pistis Sophia written in Coptic, so it's not the Syriac document, and in Coptic you see that Coptic translator chose this Coptic word aeon, which itself a Greek borrowing in language. So it renders the Syriac alma as exactly as aeon. And that you can connect with other Coptic documents, right? And most famously, the Nag Hammadi library, which is written in Coptic. And it's basically everywhere. You can see it in the Apocryphon of John. You can see it in Sethian treatises, where it's used, where this word exactly used for the Proto-speaking aeons, and most of the people who are interested in Gnosticism, they pick up this idea of aeons most probably from the Nag Hammadi library, reading some works in this treatise. Yes. But there was, of course, another broader Syriac tradition, Gnostic tradition, which is Manichaeanism. Unfortunately understudied, especially Manichaean Syriac tradition. But the problem is, of course, that the whole tradition passes down through the secondary hands, and the secondary hands are quite negative. It's orthodoxy. And there are different Syriac, at least Syriac literature we have as a refutation of Manichaeans. There's also an historian literature written in Syriac dedicated to refute the Mani and his followers. And here we can also see exactly the same pattern, that Manichaeans are actually using this alma to designate the aeons. And it's quite evidential. It's not used in a general sense of the world, because in Manichaeism there's this whole idea that there was like this demonic invasion into this upper world of light, and these demons were due to the nature they desired, sexually desired this divinities, and well, how can you sexually desire something of aeon if it just simply relates to some world or long period of time? So it's, or I want to say, it's in Manichaean literature, it's used exactly as we see it in Nag Hammadi. And we have this alamin in the Quran, as I already stated, that Rabbil Alamin, if we really follow the same pattern of thought, would be the Lord of these aeons, or Lord of the worlds. You can translate it like traditionally, because it's highly speculative what I bring up. But what interesting that in some Coptic documents, especially in Apocalypse of Adam, you see this construction that the god prefers somebody over all aeons. And this actually occurs in the Quran as fadala or fadalna ala alamin, that we preferred. And in one of the passages describing this certain specific Old Testament prophets, Lot, Elisha, Ismail, Anosh. Sometimes this particular catchphrase used for the Mary, that Mary was preferred over all aeons. So I think that's the strong connection between two traditions, because, well, how maybe they come out with the same structure independently. Maybe there's no literal dependency, but I think it's less probable from my perspective. Yeah, and this is basically, I'm reading the Apocalypse of Adam, because the words they have kept of the God of the aeons. This is another phrase which appears here, that there is a specific identification. This higher God is the God of the aeons. And you can see, if you do follow my speculation, that this Rabbil Alamin may be just the similar idea. Rab is not just simply a lord. In Arabic, it's just sustainer, maintainer, as it's, if we do take it less literally, maintainer of this pleroma, in that case, of this aeons. Yeah, and Muslim recites this every single day, every single prayer. You can't recite it without the Fatiha, without this introductory chapter. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. It's just almost what you begin your prayer with. So, yeah, that was just part of my speculation. I did the whole video about it. So if you have some question, you can ask, I guess, and we can maybe discuss something related to that in Gnosticism. Because even if we do take it as Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, in the next phrase would be Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And in many Sufi treatises, you see that this Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim stands for the sort of mother-father duality of the male-female. And mother-father deity appears in some Gnostic treatises. Barbello, for example, is mother-father deity. And it's basically the first emanation. Maybe there's allusion to that, because in Arabic, unfortunately, it's hard to distinguish between the masculine plural and masculine dual. In that sense, it can be alamin or read alamin, and in that case it's the masculine plural, but it can also read as alamain. And if you do follow that, it will be masculine dual. Yeah, but that would be masculine dual. So I don't know. It's speculative, but from my perspective, even this Rahman stuff, like, come on, there is this inscription in South Arabia exactly with this Rahman. I think that's just straight away borrowing from already popular tradition, which was present there. And this Rahman appears not only in Yemen, right, but in Syria too. So the cults were like widespread from Yemen to Syria. What the hell?
Mhm.
It's a gigantic part of the middle of the whole this geographical region. So
Yeah. And what do we think about, there's the tradition where the Archangel Michael was the first emanation. I
was
know.
and what was this the
Um, it's in a canonical text that they refer. Maybe it's, what is it, Revelation?
book
I
of
don't know. Maybe
Revelation?
it's Old Testament. I'm not sure, but there's the tradition where uh, Michael is the first creation. So
Interesting.
you wonder what's going on there.
There's also the tradition of where this Azazel figure is the first creation, but it's first angel. And you may wonder, right? Why Jesus suddenly call himself first and the last? Like, wow, what did he mean by that? First in what sense? First in cardinal sense, like because even in Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. This Echad is just the ordinal number, like the first. You can translate it, and by the way, most of the times when rabbis do translate the text of the Torah, they just translate it literally the one. But in some contexts, you can perfectly translate it as the first. And I check up like almost like half of the verses. You can easily put this semantic meaning to this word. And and this whole Shema stuff is just unending battle between rabbis and the Christians, like because how even the Christians, they take it, oh look, achat is stemming from this ahad, and you can take it as not singularity but unity in oneness. But and recently picked up even in Quran, because you have almost the repetition of that in the Surah Al-Ikhlas, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. And in Arabic, it doesn't make any sense. So it would be just, say the God is one of. It's basically a literal translation. One of what? And later verse don't clarify what. Like, so it's just grammatically incorrect. And well, that leads to the idea, well, maybe just borrowing from the Hebrew, straight away borrowing, or allusion to the, oh, look, there is a reference to this Shema. And and this Moses Shapiro scroll, and I am fascinating by this discovery, which nowadays, who is James Tabor dealing with this manuscripts, or at least they're lost, right? Some Moses Shapiro did find this, claim that this is authentic, was like straight away disregarded as a fraud in the 19th century. Then suddenly he got killed by the 2 shots in the head. Great case for the suicide, right? And this manuscript has disappeared from the public. But what is interesting, that in this, at least from transcripts we have this original scrolls, There's no Yahweh in the scrolls. The Shema is pronounced without the Yahweh name, without the tetragrammaton. Shema Israel, Elohim Eloheinu, Elohim Ahad. And you might wonder that there was a redaction going on in the Hebrew scripture, and the Elohim was removed as the higher God, as the not the higher God, but the father of Yahweh, right? If we are dealing with this Canaanite mythology. And Yahweh was inserted later on by the redactionists because, well, maybe it was dominant deity at the time and they wanted to make him the chief, like the chief deity. There was some sort of theological battle going on. And well, that do explain a lot why in New Testament we don't have tetragrammaton, and in Quran we don't have tetragrammaton. We just simply don't have it. Like that's why we have Allah, not Yod He Vav He, and Allah follows this general pattern stemming from this chief deity El, right? Mesopotamian deity. Yeah, but going back to Azazel, yeah, there's the famous traditions, apocryphal Syriac literature. I did the whole video about the fall of the angels, and that Quran follows. Broadly popular, at least by the time of the compilation of the Quran, that idea that there was some sort of enmity between this Azazel figure and the Adam. This, I don't know, this angel at the beginning rejected to worship and venerate this creation, and he was expelled from the paradise because of that, and he became demon in that sense. And yeah, that's weird stuff. Given the fact that this Azazel is basically compound word Azaz El, and this Azaz or Aziz appears several times in the Quran itself as the attribute of the God, of Allah. But I think that's just such a big pain for the scholars, because nobody even suggests that Allah is a general term when you're dealing with the current translation. They just take it as the reference to the higher God, because God forbid, if we do agree that Allah is the general term, there would be multiple gods in the Quran. God this and that, God that and that, depending on what type of attributes you would bring up. Yeah, but obviously, if you follow that pattern of thought, that the whole Quran must be revisited, and that's a lot of work to be done, and nobody want to do that. Yeah, don't mind me, but there was attempts even by the Christoph Luxemburg, by the Günther Lühling. He was highly critical to the text of the Quran himself. That's why he suggested there was basically originally it was the Christian homily, something like that. Anti-Trinitarian. He follows this pattern of thought that in inception Islam was an anti-Trinitarian movement, which is evolution of the Syriac anti-Trinitarian tradition. You can trace it to the Paul of Samosata and different Syriac Christian writers who were later by the Orthodoxy claimed to be heretics, obviously. And and he revisioned much of the stuff. His work is amazing, and it's said that many, even Muslims, just straight away, why do I need to follow this Christian apologist? But like they don't even know, like they didn't read Günther Lühling was praising Muhammad. Muhammad was like the last revolutionary who tried to restore this pristine form of Christianity. Because I think myself that Günther Lüling himself was like a big fan of the Arian Christianity, Arianism, Arian Church. And there are certain bias, obviously, in his works, because just his assumption, and he builds everything around this assumption that Islam originated as anti-Trinitarian movement. And yeah.
Yep. So here, maybe we'll take some comments and questions. If that's all right.
Yeah.
Here, Matthew Casico. That's a new name. So yeah, thanks for your question. Let's see. Can you guys comment on the Quran saying that Allah created man from a single soul? Nafs, Wahid.
Yeah, Nafsul Wahid. And how that soil or soul, I think you mean the soul, is praised in the feminine. Also, can you comment on disjoint? Oh, okay, disjoint letters, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the praised in the feminine, not nafs. The problem that in Arabic, you can see that the feminine is often used as the indicator of the non-human, actually. So it's not necessarily feminine. Often the feminine pronoun, which is either ta marbuta in a genitive case, or ha. In Arabic, it's used for the inanimate objects often. So yeah, but Allah created from the single soul. Yeah, it's I don't know how to even connect it, because obviously what is gonna be, what type of the verb we will see, it would be khalaqa, and khalaqa is a much broader meaning in Arabic. It's just not simply created. Khalaqa means to separate, to divide, and obviously in that times they didn't have the ex nihilo creation story. But by the time of the compilation of the Quran, they believed that there was like this primordial water, and God separated this heaven from the earth, and hence you got the whole creation story. Even in Genesis, it's just the same. The word which is used in Genesis, bara, means exactly the same as the halakha, to create. So maybe, or what is meant in the verse, that God separated the man from male from a female, from this pristine source in this one soul. And in that case, it points out to the syzygies, to the androgenical, to the pristine androgenical states of higher or upper aeons. Because Sophia is being separated from her counterpart, the Christ, and this separation brings up the creation of the universe. I hope I answered the first question, but also comment on disjoint letters. Well, we discussed it with Eliot's, but my idea that this disjoint letters itself most probably reference to some gospel, and we see it in Manichaean documents when in some homiletic tradition of Manichaeans they would use reference the gospel using the aleph, the specific letters, and that would correspond to the gospel of money in that case, because there were Manichaeans. This is chapter Aleph, basically, at the beginning of the homily. What it means that this particular homily is connected to the first chapter of the Gospel of Money. And I think something similar going on in the Quran. It's Aleph Lam Mim. Aleph would be like the first chapter, Lam, or is this is a 12th letter, or I don't remember, but you get the point that it's the, from my perspective, it's the most obvious candidate, but obviously there's a whole Hurufi tradition, what is called, it's like the gematria tradition in the Sufism, Hurufism, where they try to connect it with some specific mystery that, because the whole letter paradigm we have, you can, in every single occurrence of this disjoint letters, they actually dividable, how to say, dividable by 19, by this number 19. And that's why this whole movement of the Quran, particular movement of Quran only community, there was a guy, Rashad Khalifa, and he like almost have obsession with this letter 19. Everything is about letter 19 because of this particular story and just fact. It doesn't necessarily prove the prophethood of Rashad Khalifa, but just factual that every single occurrence you can divide it. If you combine it, the numerical value of these letters, they can be divided to 19. Also, you don't find the letter, the last letters in the Arabic alphabet. This weird sounds like ta, tha. It just follows the Aramaic or Hebrew, broadly speaking, Hebrew alphabet, 22 letters. And that's quite suspicious, for me at least, like, because some guy estimated it's like almost 1 to 1 million chance of this happening in the text. Well, it might be coincidental, but I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's just either reference to some Aramaic texts in that case, or maybe the Jewish gematria was the prevalent. That's why they won't use this probably native Arabic letters, let's call them like that. But yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. All right, so he writes that he thinks, so this is Matthew Kosick. Well, I'll just put it on the screen here. Thanks, guys. Sorry for the typos. Driving on the road, I had thought maybe the creation story from a single soul, feminine, maybe talking about Sophia.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah, the problem where there is no. Yeah, but I already said, like, I think that's just the reference to the Gnostic, this idea of the separation of the syzygies, this original counterpart state of the male female. I think it's just my speculation, but it's possible. It's possible that it might be connected to the broader Gnostic cosmology, like. And Quran borrows many things from the Gnostic text. From my perspective, just undoubtedly, how can you even doubt that? Like, even this Adam tradition, fall of the Adams, it was popular way before Islam in the Syriac Gnostic milieu. So
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's everything we have for comments or questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other points you wanted to bring up? Maybe unless there's no other questions or whatnot, we can start wrapping up.
Yeah, we can just wrap it up, I guess.
Yeah, very good. Anything you wanted to say that you didn't have the chance to?
Well, no, I thought I just wanted to bring something, but I forgot, fortunately, and I'm afraid I won't gonna able to remember what I forgot. So let's wrap it up.
Yep. All right, good deal. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Unless I'll keep my eye open in the last few seconds if there's any burning questions. It looks like there's not. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and go subscribe to Gnostic Quran YouTube channel. And yeah, have a great rest of the day, everybody.